Hello, my spooky friends. It is Stacy, and welcome to Special Effects Makeup on a Budget, where I create cosplay costumes, Halloween makeup, and props, making sure things stay affordable with easy follow tutorials. And today, I'm showing you how I created this cyborg look using air foam clay, water paints, and a glue gun. So if you will, join me in my kitchen, and let's get into it. Today I'm using air foam clay, and I have covered my head cast in plastic. This is going to help later on maneuver once it has dried. But in order for you to use air foam clay, you do need to knead it. And what I like to do is just continue to pull apart and place it back on top of itself. And once you're able to roll it into a small ball or whatever size that you are working with, and you do not see anything overlapping that looks like a seam, that's when you know that you have warmed it up enough in order to start sculpting with it. Be sure not to overwork the clay. It will be warm enough to use where it won't stick onto objects. That's why you see me working on my countertop without putting any cornstarch or anything down to make it release. But if you have a hard time with it, that you can do. You can use that to get it to come off of objects and tools a lot easier. And now I'm just using my hands to put it on top of my cast to see the thickness that I want. One thing you have to learn about using air foam clay is not to use it very thin. If you use it thin, it has a tendency to dry with cracks, or it will, once it's dried, break a lot easier. And here I am going with an X-Acto knife and cutting out the rough shapes. This is the plate that's going to go on the top of the head. So I wanted that plate-like look, so I'm using angles in certain areas to get that cyborg futuristic look. Air foam clay will dry faster than normal clay, but you still have some time to work with it. If you find that your pieces are getting dry, you can spritz it with some water, or you could take your finger and rub over the area that you're working on to keep it pliable. And that's the one thing I like to do with either my finger or tools. If I've got any nicks or dents, or I want to shape something, I dip any tool or my finger into water and roll that over the area that I either need to smooth out texture that has accidentally gotten onto it, or to thin the pieces out. And since this is also up on the head, I go ahead and create the shapes that I want for this plate in the center using my X-Acto knife. Also, when not using the clay that you have kneaded, you need to put it back or cover it with plastic so it does not dry out. And what I'm doing here is I'm going in with my finger and my wooden spatula, and I'm making sure that those shapes get a little sharper and rounding out and smoothing out some of the areas, so this looks like a very sleek, a little bit more modern plate instead of just a metal plate. Continuing to use my spatula, I go in and score the shape now that it's on the head cast, and I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Just score in the shapes that I want, and then I take it off and I place it on my counter, and again with my X-Acto knife cut the shape that I need. And I find that if you roll it off of the clay, the piece that you cut, it will come off with a finer line than it would be if you were to pull it. Again with the spatula and water, making sure those shapes are in place, smoothing out any texture that has popped up, and that can happen by accident, touching it, leaning over it. So it's real easy to go in and use the spatula to smooth things out. Also, again with the finger, I like to go back and forth. It just depends on what you're comfortable with, so you don't have to use any special tools in order to get the shapes that you want, other than cutting or shaping with your finger or cutting with an X-Acto knife. It is very forgiving and easy to work with. So I do this on both sides. These are the plates that I'm going to attach later in the front, because I'm going to use a ball cap later, so it applies over the head a lot easier, and I'm going to want that to be one solid piece. Since a cyborg is a mixture of the human element with robotics, I kept the human element in the face only, and this is going to cover up the ears with a ball cap as well. And this is the small strip that I am using to connect all the plates at the front. I wanted there to be black so it would contrast in the ball cap, but I want these pieces to actually connect so I have one solid piece. So after I put my strip in, I began to press in the areas that I want the pieces to connect by using water, a tool, and my finger. I use another small strip for the other side, making sure to connect those pieces with water in the front. Now I took about 3 days to sculpt this entire look, and so on the end of the evening, as long as the foam is not tacky, you can lay strips of wet paper towel over them to keep them from drying out too quickly, and then also lay a bag over the top. As long as the bag is covering it, it will remain pliable and not completely dry. You don't have to make sure that you have a tight seal around the bust in order to stop air. Just as long as air doesn't get directly on it, that will be okay to sit overnight. So here the next day, I had some issues because that foam was tacky and I had textures that were picked up by the plastic bag. So I changed those center pieces in the front that connected the small strips to each plate and redesigned those, getting out the texture using my finger. And here I am going in and placing random parts on the plates, things that I would think would be considered like rivets or screws. Just to make that sleek, I took some stickers from the dollar store. I know that I am probably known now as the dollar store sticker queen, but they're so versatile and they're very cheap and you can use them for everything. If it's not a color that you like, you can color it or change the texture and the look of it. So with a toothpick, because it's a little bit more finicky, I go in and place these stickers on those center and out on these strips that connect the plates. One of the most fun parts about doing this cyborg look is that you get the opportunity to break a lot of rules because it's so futuristic, and then you don't really know the technology. You can use random different parts like screws, anything from electronics. And with this look, I am using pieces from hardware store, from things I have laying around, those old computer keyboards, and in this look, a lot of parts from a Fender amp. When using stickers, you have an opportunity to place them when you need them and lift them up, so don't press those in before you have a fixed position. And so the other part about the plastic wrap over the bust is so that I can take an X-Acto marker and map out the shape that I want against the face. And so what I like to do is go in and put the shape in that I want, and then I take my phone, I take a photo of it, and then I take that photo and then I reverse the image so I can use that as a reference once I go in to put the shape on the other side. Because honestly, I am not good at freehanding a lot of stuff. I want things to match and I get kind of caught up. So these are some of the techniques that I use to keep that anxiety at a minimum. Another thing that might be helpful is if you go ahead and cut your shapes out of cardboard and then sculpt over that cardboard, lift that up, and then use those. I'm scoring in some indentions on that top plate to give it more of that sleek, futuristic design look, and I go in and smooth things out with a spatula, getting rid of any texture that might have taken place. And I need to store this for the night, so I'm taking some chopsticks and I am taping those to the front and to the back, so when I put my plastic bag over, it does not touch any of the sculpt. In order to create those shapes for the side pieces of this sculpt, I found that it was just easier to go in with basic shapes such as triangles, put those into the area that I drew onto the face, and tapping in the shapes with my spatula and water, I go in and I attached each piece together, making it one solid piece by taking my finger and pressing those together, making sure that those joints are not thin. And also you'll see that this sculpt is behind the jawline, so if I was to move my mouth during this design, it will not break or move. That's something you need to consider when doing your sculpts as to the areas that will be moving. And again, with some more dollar store stickers, I go in and create little small places that I think would make it look like rivets were used to create the plate. After I've gotten everything into place with the stickers, I make sure to press them in slightly to make them look like they are embedded into the plate. If your clay is already dry at this point, you may want to use a little bit of eyelash glue to keep them into place. I'm using a floral tubing that is pliable. You can stretch it, and so I'm using that with the idea of the cyborg meets the human element. So my idea was that these tubes would be what would carry fluid to keep any skin part of the human element alive. So I use that in this design for each side of the head, and with a little bit of clay, I go in and wet the back of it with some water, and I put that over it. It's almost like, just think of it as tape or a band-aid, because that's the shape of it, to keep it into place. And also I add rivets onto this as well. And when I mean rivets, I mean more dollar store stickers. So again, I'm going through and shaping up these small little band-aid like, which I consider plates, which I put stickers on to make it look metal. And I'm placing that onto the plastic. It's just going to hold for a little while so I can get the design in and make sure that everything is lining up with the other side. Now for the next day, it's time to remove this sculpt off to the plastic and the head cast. And so what I'm doing is very gently going through and lifting up from up underneath to remove it. And the clay is still malleable. It's not completely dry at this point, because once I do lift it, you see that it does spring a little bit. Be careful if your pieces are thinner, because once you start to lift, you might break it. So what I'm doing is using a ball cap, and I do reuse ball caps because they are expensive. So if I can cover a ball cap with a new color completely, or I can use the colors that are on it from a previous look mixed in with a new look, that's some of the ways that I save money on ball caps. And you'll see that those pieces that we connected in the front, they're very delicate, but they do create one piece. And once you have it on the ball cap, it will dry and attach itself to that ball cap. But for right now, I'm able to lift and move it to get the precise location of where I've had it before. And going in with a little bit of tackiness from that top piece in the center, I am using a glue gun, and I am attaching the tubing that I placed in earlier to give it more of a secure fit. I chose to do this tubing to the back of the head, avoiding the ear area, because I already have to glue those pieces down, and that has a tendency to come up the quickest is the seam from the ball cap around any moving areas, so around the jawline and in the neckline. So what I'm doing is just be mindful about certain placements that will help your sculpt wear longer. And also, if you're having a hard time with a glue gun getting it into smaller places, put some glue on a toothpick and go in and get it secure that way. It'll save you a lot of grief. I'm going in with some more floral tubing. If you see, I placed it into that black part. Now these are parts that are randomly from old computers, and this all came from, like I said, the guts inside of a Fender amp. And I'm placing some floral wire over into the back and getting that glued in the place. I just thought it would just lift it up and give it a little bit more height. And I am using water-based paint. This is black. This is water-based paint that I pick up every year from Walmart around Halloween, and it will have these spaces where it's not opaque because it's real slick and sleek. Just let it dry and continue to give it enough coats, that way it's opaque. And I'm using Mehron silver paint with a mixing liquid, and I'm going in, and anything that I wanted to be metal, I'm painting. So that means the stickers as well as anything else that's black or discolored. I just want it to have that futuristic sleek look. And today I'm using Mehron's Paradise palette. It is their pastel paints, and I'm getting that coated in and color all the plates in the skull. And I went through and I painted mine twice, and it gave me the opacity that I was looking for. And if you are interested in the brushes that I'm using today, they come from Narrative Cosmetics. They hold water paints very well. They're very easy to clean. I've been using them for over a year now, and you'll see most of them clean up very well and with very little staining. If you're interested to pick up a set, they're pretty reasonably priced, and I think they're worth it. I'll have it listed in the description box below. Because this design took away the human ears to this look, I am going through with a dotting tool and I'm scoring in a couple of deep places into the plates near the ears. It was my idea of it to look like a speaker, but something a little bit more modern in the design. But I'm also taking some Mehron paint and pushing that in so they show up and look very deep instead of just sitting flat on top of the sculpt. So for the cyborg and human part of the element, I thought the being kept artificially alive when it comes to skin and hair needed to change and be a little bit more dramatic. So I'm using water-based paints over the eyebrows and my eyelashes. And I also chose a foundation and a powder that was a couple shades lighter to achieve that look. Using my NYX Jumbo Pencil and Ghost, I map out the area so I can draw in my plates, because I'm going to use stickers for the neck. And with my Shop Miss A black liner, I'm going in and drawing in plates around the areas of my neck, over my collarbone, shoulder, and into the breastplate. So the best thing I could tell you about this is to be mindful about how things would sit and look metal, because I made sure when I put in my shapes that they worked with the contours of my body, so then when I maneuvered into the camera, it didn't distort the image of the plate. This Shop Miss A eyeliner is absolutely fantastic. It's good for drawing onto the body and it does not skate across the skin. If you're looking to pick up some products and save yourself some money, check out the shopping links for Shop Miss A. Some of my favorite products and things that I use are in there, and if you do decide to use that, I do appreciate it because it helps support the channel. More water-based paints over the skin, making sure that each layer dries before you go back over it. And with a little bit of beige and some blue, I'm using in for the eyeshadow, going into the crease, and a little bit of shimmer over the lid, popping in a white eyeliner, darkening the outer crease, and going up underneath the eye with a shimmer, and making sure I get a little bit of shimmer up on that brow bone, and contouring with the same color, keeping it blue, cheek, nose, and into the hairline. I am using my Terrifier eyeshadow palette to set my black today. This will also help it become more opaque and keep it into place. And going back in with my Mehron paint and painting in my blue plates. For more added dimension, I'm going in with some blue eyeshadow and going along the areas and the edges on the inside to give it more depth. Again, back in with some eyelash glue and some stickers to make those plates look more like metal with some rivets. And with some dollar store stickers, I go in with eyelash glue and stick those in the area to make it look like I have a neck but made out of metal. Once I have my headpiece into place, it's time to make sure to get those ears covered and to get the ball cap laid down, and I'm using spirit gum to hold that into place, making sure I use that for the tubing that's attached from the back of the head onto the breastplate as well, and also attaching the side pieces to the face. Using a little bit of shimmer, the nose and the cheek area, I go in with a pencil and outline my lips. And I'm using a blue lipstick from NYX. It is their whipped formula, very comfortable. Here is the final look. This was such a fun one to do today. Don't forget to subscribe because I will be unboxing my Terrifier box that I got at the Fan Expo. You don't want to miss that. And if you'd like to see sneak peeks, behind the scenes footage, or vote on my next look, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Those links are below. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.